Hi, I'm Michelle Goodrum from Mesa, Arizona, and I love researching in land records, so we're going to be talking today about the Bureau of Land Management. Well, the Bureau of Land Management has a wonderful website that all researchers who are researching in what's called the federal land states, which are the states where the federal government, mostly in the West, provided land to the people. You can find your ancestors on this website if they, say, purchased a homestead or had a military bounty warrant. And you can look them up using the tools on the website and find out where they had their land. You can find the patent that they would have received when they got their land. There are a myriad of maps showing not only where your ancestor lived, but also who the neighbors were. And a lot of the records that are online also include things like the surveyor's maps and the surveyor's field notes. So if you're trying to tell your ancestor's story about where they lived and what the place that they lived looked like, that's the perfect place to get that background information. Now, you can also get information from researching on site at the Bureau of Land Management. You can use their tract books, which are also available on Family Search. And the other thing about the Bureau of Land Management website is that provides you with the information that you would need to get what's called the land entry case file from the National Archives. And that's the papers that were created during the process of your ancestor obtaining their land. And those documents are just rich in details. So there's a couple of search tips that I have for using the BLM website. For one thing, they do have wildcard features, so you can, because people didn't spell their names consistently, you might want to use either a % or an underscore to replace letters in a name. And then also, if you don't know what state your ancestor might have had land, or if you think maybe he got federal land in multiple states like my ancestor did, you can use the drop-down menus on the search feature for locality and just pick any state and then search that way. And another tip I do have is when you finally do find your ancestor on the Bureau of Land Management and you pull up the results, look and see what act he got his land under, and that will tell you the law, and then you can go look at the law and see what the requirements were for him to get his land. For example, homestead entries, there were many homestead acts, and they all have different requirements. So if you're trying to tell your ancestor's story, that will help you to determine if they were under the Grazing Act, then they had to provide grazing land for their animals. If it was the original 1862 Homestead Act, they were farming. So those are really important things to look up. Well, I have an ancestor who I was trying to figure out who his father was, and I ended up finding various pieces of land that he had gotten from the federal government in different parts of the country. I followed him across the country and was able to discover who his potential siblings were, and ultimately who his father was. But what was really neat about that was then I followed his children and grandchildren across the country using the Bureau of Land Management website and found out where all of these descendants, including my grandfather, got their homesteads and other properties. So the time period that I researched this one family covered about 85 years and covered 4 generations. Well, the Bureau of Land Management only covers the federal land states, and basically what those are they're not the 13 original colonies or the children of the 13 original colonies like Tennessee, Kentucky, Maine. The federal land also does not include Texas and Hawaii, because when they entered the United States, they had their own land system. So the Bureau of Land Management website really only covers what is called the federal land states, and they're mostly in the West, but not entirely.